Before we get the meeting started, I wanted to make a few comments because we have a beloved staff member, Darlene Jackson, who is planning to retire at the end of the month. She's actually going to be MCE's first retiree ever. So she continues to be a trailblazer even at this stage. So I wanted to take just a couple of minutes to say a few words about Darlene, and then we want to honor her with an award and something yummy to eat. So I want to start off. I'm getting the eye. So here's what I wanted to say. On behalf of MCE, I want to express our truly heartfelt appreciation for your 12 years of dedication and commitment. Your first day with MCE was August 9th, 2012, which happened to be the day of our annual board retreat. So from that day forward, you jumped right in, you figured out what was needed, and you made it happen. When you began, I think none of us knew that you were embarking on clearing the path as the first ever California CCA Clerk of the Board. And over the past 12 years, you've contributed immensely to make MCE what it is today. You've been a mentor to countless MCE staff. You've been an encyclopedia of MCE's history. And you've also started a Clerk of the Board group for CCAs across the state. Your warm smile and enthusiastic energy are contagious, and you will be so missed. But you have built a foundation and processes that will carry on as your legacy. Thank you, Darlene. And I wanted to open it up if anyone else would like to make any comments before we do the award.
This is Supervisor Brown. I really haven't met you too much, but I want to let you know as a retired teacher, now you get to sleep in. You do not have to answer any phones, and it's okay to mess up on emails now because it's not public records request stuff. So just good luck.
This is Director Nakamura here in Concord, and I just want to say thank you, Darlene, for your kindness when I was being onboarded. Just always knew that I was, whether it was on the end of an email, I knew there was a smile on the other side, and it really meant a lot to me. So thank you, and good luck to you in retirement.
And this is Director Darling, and don't do what I did and retire and then run for something, because it negates the whole retirement thing.
Recording in progress.
Okay, any other comments before we do the award part?
Yes.
Oh, yes, please.
I just want to tell you thank you. Since I started with MCE, you have been nothing but gracious to me, and your 12 years of service has been awesome. You know, I think all of us look at you and you just keep us all on track. And when we have meetings, Miss Darlene will text me. She'll text me at 7 a.m. like, I'm gonna get Chanel. Like she will follow up and she'll make sure she get me and keep me on track. And I mean, thank you. I know you have to do that for everyone. And so not to give you a runaround, but I appreciate your patience and just, you know, being there. And so I had to come over today, and I told you when I walked through the door, like, just for you, because I really wanted to make sure I had the opportunity to see you before you go. I want you to enjoy your retirement and have fun. When I walked in, I asked Miss Darlene, I said, "Are you sad?" And she was like, "No, I'm excited." So I know you're looking forward to traveling. Call me. I want to travel too. We could go to Rome, Europe together. I'm ready to go abroad because I've never been before. But just enjoy, you know, job well done on being the first, you know, and something for everyone to follow. So thank you.
I also want to say I'm grateful to you. You and I met back in 2015 when I became when El Cerrito joined and I became the alternate. And definitely, with all of the schedules and everything that I do, you and your team, from the beginning have always kept me on track. And so I'm grateful to you. I'm excited for your next chapter and know that. I know we're friends on Facebook, so I can visit and see what you're doing around the world and having fun. So again, congratulations on your retirement. Proud of you.
I too just want to quickly say congratulations. I don't think our constituents know how imperative it is to have a Darlene on this board. I am a better public servant because of you, and I just wanted to say that. Thank you for your charismatic energy, but also your in many ways like pure accountability. I'm wondering if you're like the clerk of the board or the boss of the board. It's okay. I'll take the boss. You've been so beautiful as a colleague to work with, and I just want to say thank you for your leadership here. I've been so proud and honored to be on this board since 2020, and you have been a critical part of my professional development, my understanding, my ability to be a better peer to my colleagues on this board as well, and to share my knowledge with them. You have been such a just a beautiful blessing, and I just want to say thank you for your for being and congratulations on retirement. Should I retire tomorrow? Can I do that? No? Okay. I got a long ways to go. But again, thank you for just setting and being a trailblazer. And we're gonna miss you. We're gonna miss you. And I'm still healing from understanding this from last time we saw each other. And I'm just I'm still shocked, but you deserve it. You are so deserving of so much and so much to come to you, I hope, and blessing. So thank you, Miss Darlene. Thank you so much. Mhm.
All right, so we have an award to pass along, Darlene, and then we have to take a picture. Yeah. Something to put on your desk. You're still gonna have a desk.
Not necessary.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. All right, we are handing over a certificate and a little memento to keep at home. So, all right. Thanks, Darlene. And I believe there's a cake. We would need to get a picture of it before we cut into it. So we share it for you. Folks may not know, but Darlene is a master of creating beautiful and delicious cakes and has created many cakes for birthdays of staff. And so we're trying to repay the favor. I know we can't quite reach her caliber, but here we are. We should get a picture.
That would be it looks beautiful.
Okay. Anyone want a photo of this? Oh, we're good.
I have nothing prepared because I really didn't want to say anything. But it's been an amazing journey. There is nothing that I could find to say negatively about MCE. When I came to MCE, the only thing I knew about energy was yelling at my kids to turn the lights off. Now I am fairly well versed in a variety of energy resources and, how things are really supposed to work. I appreciate all of the comments that have been made. And I just want to say thank you for appreciating me, but I appreciate all of you and those of you in Concord as well, for doing what you do. I was once, well, it was once said that that's Darlene's board. And I claim you, because the reason that was said was because she can get them to do anything. So that was a huge compliment, a very huge compliment. And the reason it was so easy is because I always felt board members will do, people in general, will do pretty much anything you ask of them if they believe you care about them and respect their time and what they do. And one of the things that I've always said, these people have real jobs. So we need to be considerate of their time. And we've always tried to be. And so I remember once Dawn asked me, and I won't be long, I promise. Dawn asked me, how do you get them to do that? I said, I feed them. We provide breakfast, lunch, and dinner, whatever is needed. But this, after 12 years, this is a brand new group. But you all are still so wonderful. And we appreciate you so very much. When I started, there were 13 board members. I don't know who all these folks are. I don't know where they came from, why they're here. But thank you. Thank you for whatever amount of time you've been on this board. And I've had an opportunity to interact with you. Thank you for your kindness and your generosity with your time and all of the wonderful comments that you've said to me over the years or months, however long you've been here. Thank you so very much to all of you in Concord as well.
Chair, can I say one thing in response to her comments? Can you hear me?
We
I
can
guess.
hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to acknowledge everything that Darlene just said is the reason why everyone loves her. And I serve on quite a few boards, and I have never heard anyone appreciate elected officials for having a day job and still doing the elected official job. It's a really big deal that you acknowledge that. And that's why everyone in the room has been just gushing about you all night long. So just those are the most perfect thank you words you could have created. So thank you very much for all of your time. And yeah.
All right. Well, I know we still need to do a roll call and get the meeting started. We're going to do a quick photo out there with our chair and Darlene, and then I think we can get going on the roll call.
Don, in Concord, we want to cut the cake first.
I don't know. I think it's too late for that. But at least you do have cake in Concord. I just wanted to let folks know that we are still waiting for one or two of our remote locations to dial in. So we won't be able to do roll call until that happens, but hopefully it will be very soon.
Belvedere? Banisha? Here. Thank you. Concord?
I'm here.
Contra Costa County?
John Joya showed up.
Corte Madera,
I poked at him about that.
Here.
Danville,
Here.
El Cerrito,
Here.
Fairfax.
Here.
Thank you. Fairfield,
Here.
Hercules,
Here.
Lafayette,
Here.
Larkspur.
Here.
Thank you. County of Marin, Martinez,
Present.
Mill Valley,
Here.
Moraga,
Here.
Napa. Here. The County of Napa and 4 Napa cities.
Here.
Thank you. Novato,
Here.
Oakley,
Here.
Pinole,
Here.
Pittsburgh,
Present.
Pleasant Hill, Richmond,
Here.
Ross, San Anselmo,
Here.
San Pablo.
Here.
Thank you. San Rafael, San Ramon,
Here.
Sausalito,
Here.
Solano,
Yes.
Tiburon,
Here.
Vallejo, Walnut Creek.
Here.
Quorum established.
Thank you. And good evening, everyone. We will now convene our meeting for today is Thursday, July 18th. All right. Next, we'll move on to public open time. This item is opportunity for members of the public to comment on anything that is not on the agenda. Do we have any members of the public in Concord?
None here in Concord.
Thank you. Any members of the public here in San Rafael?
I see none.
All right, and any public comment via Zoom?
I see no raised hands, Chair.
All right, thank you. Next, we'll be moving on to closed session. We will now convene in closed session for a conference with real property negotiators to discuss price and terms of payment. The agency negotiators are our CEO, Don, and Victon. At this time, all remote locations should request members of the public to exit the meeting room. A mic check in Concord.
Concord, can you hear us?
Apologies, we were muted. And can you hear us now in Concord?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
We're going to restart roll call. Benicia,
Here.
Concord.
Here.
Contra Costa County. Corte Madera,
Here.
Danville,
Here.
El Cerrito,
Here.
Fairfax.
Here.
Thank you. Fairfield,
Here.
Hercules,
Here.
Lafayette,
Here.
Larkspur,
Here.
Martinez,
Here.
Mill Valley,
Here.
Moraga,
Here.
Napa. Here. The County of Napa and 4 Napa cities.
Here.
Novato,
Here.
Oakley,
Here.
Pinal,
Here.
Pittsburgh,
Present.
Richmond,
Here.
San Anselmo,
Here.
San Pablo, San Ramon,
Here.
Sausalito,
Here.
Solano,
Yes.
Tiburon,
Here.
Walnut Creek.
Here.
Quorum established.
Thank you. Moving on to board announcements. Are there any board announcements from directors here in San Rafael? Concord or virtually? All right. Seeing none. Next, we'll go to public open time. Do we have any public comment for non-agenda items from the public?
I see no raised hands online there. And none here in San Rafael.
And are there any members of the public in Concord that may have walked in during closed session?
None here in Concord, Chair.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 7, report from our CEO.
All right, I'll make this brief. I know we have a long agenda tonight. We have a couple of slides that are going to pop up. The first item is I wanted to make sure folks are aware that we're undertaking efforts in the legislature to protect energy efficiency programs. We understand that there may be a mid-session or late session attempt to reduce funding that goes to energy efficiency programs, potentially because of a misunderstanding that would overall help with affordability. And I think that our agency is in a unique position to speak to the importance of energy efficiency programs. They really help customers reduce energy during high demand, and this lowers costs for customers. It reduces bills, it improves health and safety, especially for low-income households. So far, MCE's energy efficiency programs have delivered about $13 million in bill savings just since 2018 alone, and about $6.6 million in grid benefits, including peak demand and greenhouse gas reductions in 2023. So these are the things we want to make sure folks in the legislature are aware of. And a message went out a couple of days ago from our Director of Legislative Affairs, Stephanie Chen, asking for support if any of you or your councils or boards are willing to send in a letter supporting energy efficiency. We have draft language, draft talking points. And if you happen to know folks that are in the legislature, this would be a great time to reach out and let them know. There is no specific bill that we can point to. This is something that we believe is going to land in a bill in the next month or so. We'll certainly keep you posted. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to me or Director Stephanie Chen. And then the next item is I just wanted to let folks know that our annual joint rate mailer has gone out. This is what it looks like. It'll be showing up in your mailbox, showing you a cost comparison between PG&E and MCE, and then also a breakdown in the power generation mix. And this goes out every year around this time. It is as a result of a piece of legislation that we helped get approved back in 2011. And if you have questions, let us know. If your constituents have questions, you can send them our way, and we're happy to answer questions. But you'll see that big picture, there is the rate savings and the renewable percentage breakdown shows up here. And I think that is it for my report. Last slide. Yes, that is it. All right. Any questions?
Thank you, Dawn. Moving on to the consent calendar. First, I just want to share, I understand from the consent calendar, item C1, the meeting minutes from June 20th should be corrected. to state that Director Kohler was present instead of Director Bruce Ackerman. With that correction stated, would any members of the board like to remove any items from the consent calendar? All right, seeing none or hearing none. Are there any comments from members of the public? I know we don't have any members of the public in Concord or here in San Rafael, but do we have any on via Zoom?
I see no raised hands, Chair.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar, which would include the correction to the item C1?
So moved. Second.
All right, first by Director Beckman, second by Director Martinez. Madam Clerk, please call roll.
Panisha,
Abstain.
Concord,
Yes.
Corte Madera,
Yes.
Danville,
Yes.
El Cerrito,
Yes.
Fairfax,
Yes.
Fairfield,
Yes.
Hercules,
Aye.
Lafayette,
Yes.
Larkspur,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Mill Valley,
Yes.
Moraga,
Aye.
Napa,
Yes.
the County of Napa and 4 Napa cities,
Yes.
Novato,
Yes.
Oakley,
Aye.
Pinal,
Yes.
Pittsburgh,
Yes.
Richmond,
Aye.
San Anselmo,
Yes.
San Ramon,
Yes.
Sausalito,
Yes.
Solano,
Yes.
Tiburon,
Yes.
Walnut Creek.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next, we're moving on to item 9. This item will be introduced by our MCE General Counsel, Director Murphy.
Thank you, Chair. So before you, you have Resolution 2024-04, which is a resolution approving the purchase and sale agreement in joint escrow instructions, concerning the acquisition of real property at 1125 Tamalpais Avenue in San Rafael, and authorizing its CEO to execute and record a certificate of acceptance and take further necessary and appropriate actions to implement this resolution. So essentially, this resolution would find and determine that the purchase and sale the purchase and sale agreement for this location is beneficial to MCE. The purchase agreement would indicate a price of $5,400,000 for this building. There would be a deposit that MCE would be required to place in escrow of $100,000. That would be the liquidated damages that MCE would be subject to pay if MCE breached the sale agreement. And that MCE and seller will share the closing costs equally, and MCE would be paying the transfer tax of $16,740. MCE would also be obligated to conduct a phase 1 environmental survey. And the purchase and sale agreement would assign a reciprocal parking agreement that the seller has to MCE to take advantage of additional parking. Additionally, the resolution would authorize our CEO to execute the purchase agreement in the form that it has been provided to you, and that would authorize her to file and record a certificate of acceptance and take any further necessary actions to complete the sale. That's it, Chair.
Yeah. Thank you, Catalina. Are there any questions from members of the board or staff? All right, seeing or hearing none. Are there any comments from members of the public via Zoom, if anyone have jumped on?
I see no raised hands, Chair.
All right. Thank you. Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll move, resolution 2024-04. Second.
Directors, can you please
That
say
was
your name?
Perkins, Director Perkins for the, motion. Meadows, second.
Thank you both. Madam Clerk, please call roll.
Benicia,
Yes.
Concord,
Yes.
Corder Madera,
Yes.
Danville,
Yes.
El Cerrito,
Yes.
Fairfax,
Yes.
Fairfield,
Yes.
Hercules,
Yes.
Lafayette,
Yes.
Larkspur,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Mill Valley,
Yes.
Moraga,
Aye.
Napa,
Yes.
Napa, the County of Napa and 4 Napa cities,
Yes.
Novato,
Yes.
Oakley,
Aye.
Pinal,
Aye.
Pittsburgh,
Yes.
Richmond,
Aye.
San Anselmo,
Yes.
San Ramon,
Yes.
Sausalito,
Yes.
Solano,
Yes.
Tiburon,
No.
Walnut Creek.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next, that was our last action item for this evening. Next, we're moving on to agenda item 10, which is a discussion item. We have the Renewable Energy Development Community Benefit Funds guidelines. MCE's Manager of Communications and Community Engagement will lead this item.
Thank you so much, Chair, and good evening, everyone. My name is Jenna Tenney. I am MCE's Manager of Communications and Community Engagement. I have had the pleasure of being in front of the board a lot recently, but as a reminder, I've been here 8 years and have the pleasure of overseeing our staff that work directly with our municipalities and also our communications functions. Tonight, I'm here to speak to you about our Renewable Energy Development Community Benefit Funds guidelines, quite a mouthful, but it's an exciting opportunity for us to continue investing in renewable energy within our service area and across California. Next slide, please. So we'll start here with a little bit of background information on where these funds are coming from. So MCE does often each year, but not necessarily every year, open what's called our open season procurement opportunity. And this is a competitive opportunity for energy suppliers, renewable project developers to fulfill MCE's open resource requirements. We do have members of our Power Resources team here and also Vicken, who, if you have questions about the open season process, I'd love to direct those to those folks. But as part of that process over the last several years, we have really prioritized suppliers that do include some type of community benefit. In this case, it is funds. That is really where developers have chosen to do this, is provide some actual direct money, financial resources to help contribute to equity initiatives, essentially, in those communities. Next slide. So the community benefit funds would provide direct benefits to areas impacted by associated energy projects or support broader regional initiatives aligned with MCE's vision and mission. I always seem to combine those two words. Community support efforts could be things such as workforce training, environmental stewardship, education, or small-scale renewable energy projects in areas where those are deeply needed. Things like schools would be a good example. So these are things that MCE is doing on our own, but obviously by partnering with developers who have funds to contribute to these things, we're able to broaden our reach. And we are currently anticipating over $700,000 over the next 4 years, starting in fiscal year 24-25, that will go into this community benefit fund to be distributed into the community. So what does that actually look like? Next slide, please. So this is in your packet as well, but this is the funds that we have as of July of this year. So you can see here when the projected commercial operation date for the project is. That means completed, operating, delivering electricity. The project, what you're seeing here is the name of the developer and then the name of the project itself. So Calpine is the developer, Geysers is the project. That naming convention is throughout here. The size and type of resource. So we do have a variety of different renewable resources that are part of this, geothermal, solar and storage, and wind being the majority. And obviously the one at the bottom is standalone storage. Showing where these projects are located, the community benefit that the project developer has decided to provide, and then the fund allocation status. So these funds have a couple of different ways that they can be allocated. So the first example here, Calpine Geysers, is allocated by the seller in consultation with MCE, versus the Clearway project, the developer has elected instead to simply provide the funds to MCE, and we would be able to direct them how we would like to. Okay, next slide here. So all of the funds for the most part kind of follow those two options, either giving them directly to MCE or distributing them in allocation or allocating them with the partner. You can see here the Erevan project, Cormorant project has a little bit of a different opportunity here, and we'll talk a little bit about this in terms of the general fund guidelines. But you can see that there are two options here. Option one would be following the convention that they're simply going to allocate the money to MCE and we could distribute it appropriately. Or option two would be that they would significantly increase that community benefit dollar amount and they would work with MCE to distribute those funds in the community. So by having a voice in where those funds are going, they're willing to significantly increase that dollar amount. So this is just a snapshot of everything. Again, it's in your packet if you want to look at these in more detail, but I wanted to call out those specific items. Next slide, please. So given the fact that some of these funds are going to be coming directly to MCE and some of them we are going to be helping allocate, how are we prioritizing those things? Next slide. So the first question is of geographic prioritization. So we can choose to prioritize use of those funds in MCE service area in some of the ways that I've already mentioned and the ways that are consistent with our mission. Or we could choose to distribute them in the community of origin. And the criteria that we would use to assess if it's best to keep those funds in the community of origin would include if a project site is located in a priority community, which is defined here as Cal and Virus Green designated disadvantaged community, a state designated low income community, or a tribal community. So that's how we're defining priority populations in this case. If a project is anticipated to create ongoing negative impacts. So an example of that would be if there's increased wastewater from the production of energy from a facility, there needs to be treatment of that wastewater. And so it may make sense to keep the funds there to potentially train employees and new staff to come and treat that wastewater. So that's just a specific example, but in any case where there might be ongoing negative impacts, we would look to prioritize that community. And then the last example here is kind of speaking to the Erevan example. If a developer commits to significantly increase the benefit funds, if they are allocated within the community of origin for that project. Next slide. So when determining how to allocate funds, we want to prioritize projects that would support and advance these main priority areas. These are within MCE's mission, energy equity, so projects that address unequal access to clean and energy efficient technologies, including those that support the diverse needs of historically underserved communities. That's a big part of MCE's mission and how we allocate funds currently, so that's consistent doing that for this. Workforce development for training programs, pre-apprenticeships, educational partnerships to build a skilled workforce in the clean energy economy, helping transition us away from fossil fuels. Fossil-free energy, so small-scale solar, storage, or other distributed energy projects that would directly benefit the community. I mentioned earlier an example of solar on schools, solar plus storage on schools, other resources that would benefit the community specifically. Energy efficiency and load shifting, so initiatives that would help residents and businesses reduce their energy consumption, therefore their energy costs, and also help shift energy outside of peak hours, which helps MCE reduce costs as well. Community resilience, so projects that enhance the ability of communities to withstand and recover from power outages, including supporting critical facilities for emergency preparedness, so facilities where people can come if there's a fire evacuation, or maybe there's an outage and it's like it was the past couple of weeks, it's 105 out, and they can go and get some air conditioning and things like that. Local infrastructure improvements, so specifically infrastructure that would support sustainable development in the community. And then education, initiatives that support youth, community education, specifically in relation to renewable energy, energy efficiency, and environmental justice. So again, these are priorities that MCE has across the board. We are doing this with our sponsorships, with our programs, and so echoing this in the community benefit funds as well. Next slide, please. So we do also have evaluation criteria. Next slide. What we would be looking at are these 5 main areas: the environmental impact of a project, the feedback that we get from the community, the socioeconomic benefits, leveraging partnerships. So where do we have opportunities to leverage additional funding from partnerships with local organizations, governments, or businesses to maximize impact? And feasibility and readiness. So we want to prioritize projects that are ready for implementation, can demonstrate feasibility, and a clear plan for achieving objectives. So these are the things that we would be looking at. Are they benefiting the environment? Are they aligning with the feedback that local stakeholders have around their needs and priorities? And are they providing solutions for specific economic or health challenges, particularly for lower income and disadvantaged communities? So these again are the evaluation criteria, helping us say like, yeah, this is a really good place to invest our money, or maybe we're feeling like this only checks a couple of these boxes and this other opportunity checks more of them. So helping us evaluate where these funds should go. Next slide. So as part of this process, and as you all know, MCE values transparency. We are a part of the communities that we serve, and with these meetings and the other community engagement opportunities that we host, we are here to be responsive to our community and help them understand what it is that we're doing and why. So we would like to involve the community in our decision-making processes for these funds specifically. We do this in other ways for our programs and really heavily as part of the enrollment process for communities, so that we know in the future where we should be showing up in communities to support them best. And so in this case, we are looking to provide public and community meetings where we can provide updates on these decisions at board and committee meetings, our Community Power Coalition meetings, and when possible, incorporate that feedback into our planning and implementation. Stakeholder consultation. So maintaining ongoing engagement with key stakeholders. Again, that's why we do such a heavy outreach as part of the enrollment process, so that we know who those stakeholders are and can continue those conversations, along with community leaders, advocacy groups, to make sure that we are all aligned on what the community is actually needing and prioritizing. And then continuing to provide regular updates through our website and other communication channels, including newsletters and social media, so that the public is informed of where these dollars are going and why. Next slide. Yep. So that's an overview of these guidelines and how we are planning to allocate this approximately $700,000 that we currently have, although this continues to be a part of our open season. So we hope that over time we will have additional funds to invest both in our communities and also in priority populations at the renewable energy sites and surrounding areas. So happy to take any questions or any comments from the board. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jenna, for that presentation. Director Quinta?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. After speaking to some of the assembly members and senators in Sacramento early in the year, I think it's fantastic that we're doing this, dealing with community benefits, because I remember speaking to Senator Caballero where she was not too keen in losing agriculture acres when there's no community benefit for their residents. They're losing farmland, and you get these temporary workers that come in and they leave right away. And there's nothing for those areas where we're building solar fields and similar, solar fields in up and down the state of California. So I love this. This is fantastic because this is what they've been letting us know, the importance of community benefits. And also I did remember speaking to Congressman Costa and Congressman Valadao, I believe that's his name. And and I believe they're in the Fresno area, and they also spoke about that. So, training our next generation of workers, especially in communities of color, are so important. So, so glad to see that they are, MCE is doing the right thing and taking the lead on community benefits. So very much appreciate this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any additional questions or comments?
I have a question, Chair.
Director
Just
Perry?
a question on what other CCAs are doing in terms of community benefits and whether we're kind of the leader here or a follower or whether we're the only.
Yeah, is Jamie in, or I think Don was going to jump in, but I was going to ask if Jamie wanted to add anything there.
Yeah, I would say we are definitely in the lead on this one, but we did pick up some great ideas from Clean Power SF. Clean Power SF San Francisco has been doing this through some other San Francisco programs before they got into the CCA business. So they had a bit of a head start and had some great guidelines and parameters that we used as we were putting together our program. So I think we should give a nod to them, and we're hoping that other entities will follow in our footsteps.
Great. And just piggybacking on what Director Quinto was saying, I think it's fantastic, especially when it's in the county of origin or area of origin, where applicable, right? There may be areas where, a workforce program doesn't make sense, right? And then it might be a little bit farther afield. But I think where it can, I think the county of origin makes the most sense, and where we can correlate that with the Cal Enviro screen and the disadvantaged communities, all the better.
So make a motion, but I
Yeah.
forgot public comments.
Director Murphy, yeah?
No, I don't.
Okay. All right, any questions or comments from Concord?
One last question. On the one where this is Director Darling, on the one where they offered more if they got to control it, have we made our decision which way we want to go?
We are planning to work with them to distribute the funds in the community in San Mateo County.
So more for that.
Yes.
More, but they
Yeah.
get more control.
They, the Eravon team has done a ton of research into the local organizations to support. We had have had actually a couple of conversations with them about how they were approaching the process and thinking about where to contribute. Specifically, they had been speaking to some organizations who said, we really only need $10,000. We don't need 100,000. We don't need a crazy amount of money. Just this little bit is going to give us everything we need for the next year, or it's going to allow us to hire another staff person or things like that. So they've been talking with these organizations, and because obviously we don't operate in San Mateo County, we did also consult with Peninsula Clean Energy, and they were familiar with a lot of organizations as well, and felt like the money was going to be going to some really good places. So they're planning to start distributing that soon.
So they're doing it from benevolence and not from just control freakiness.
Yes, yeah. So they did so much research on this, and for them it was really they wanted to contribute the additional funding in the community specifically, totally understanding, you know, MCE. If we wanted to go with the 200,000, we could have, but these seem like some really great organizations and are going to directly benefit the surrounding the area surrounding the project.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Director Darling. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item?
I see no raised hands, Chair.
All right. If there isn't any further discussion on this item, then we'll move on to item 11. All right. Next is PG&E transfer of Diablo Canyon, GHG free. Don will introduce this item.
Sorry. Just wanted to highlight that this is not an action item. And after having some discussion tonight, it will go to the Community Power Coalition, our board committees, and then come back for board action in August or September. So just a discussion item tonight. We're going to hear from Sabrina Soldavini, who leads our policy team, and then primarily from Johnny Kipiator, who is our senior manager of power analytics. So I'm going to turn it over to you all to kick it off.
Awesome, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Awesome, thanks. Yeah, good evening, everyone. My name is Serena Soldavini, Manager of Policy. And as Dawn mentioned, I'm just going to do kind of a brief introduction on why we're here today, discussing PG&E transfer of GHG-free attributes from Diablo Canyon. And so, you know, I think I'll let Johnny get into kind of the weedy bits, but just want to go by way of background, provide a little bit of background on how we got to this point, and in particular, sorry, next slide, please. And in particular, how this allocation process that we're here to discuss tonight evolved out of the power charge indifference adjustment, or the PCIA. And, you know, when, as I'm sure you all recall, when MCE formed and CCA customers began departing from the investor-owned utilities, or IOUs, service in around 2010. And when that started happening, you know, in the case of MCE customers, prior to them departing, PG&E had been planning to serve those customers into the future and procuring energy and signing contracts to meet those customers' needs. And as they began to depart, PG&E was left with excess resources, particularly for those resources with long useful lives like nuclear and hydroelectric power. So to ensure that customers who remained with the IOUs would not have to pay for these costs entered into on now CCA customers' behalf, the CPUC directed the IOUs like PG&E to charge CCA customers for the power purchased on their behalf prior to their departure. And at a high level, the way that PCIA charge works is to charge the difference between the actual cost of that resource portfolio and the market value of those resources that were purchased before the customer departed. And so how does that really lead us to where we are today to talk about GHG-free allocations from Diablo Canyon? So really, like when the CPUC, the Public Utilities Commission, was coming up with the methodology to value this portfolio of resources, they had to come up with essentially market price benchmarks to figure out what the value of the resources was to compare it against the actual cost. And so that's a pretty wonky technical methodology that they've created. But what's important for our purposes here tonight is that when they were doing that in this proceeding at the CPUC, Cal CCA and MCE kind of argued that what the PUC hadn't accounted for was the GHG-free value, the kind of incremental premium that folks would pay for the GHG value of these resources, in particular those large hydro and nuclear resources. But at the time, I think in 2018, when the decision was made, the commission found that they couldn't reliably and accurately value the GHG-free value, the GHG premium essentially for these resources. So essentially they valued them at zero and found that they didn't have a value because they couldn't accurately assign a value to the GHG-free attributes. So what they did instead was they valued them at zero and required the IOUs to allocate those GHG-free attributes to LSCs on a load proportional basis. And on a if they wanted to accept, to use on their power content label. And that really kind of kicked off this large, several year process now. I think we're 6 years into this process of allocating out GHG-free attributes for PG&E's large hydro and nuclear resources. And with that, I think I'll turn it over to Johnny to take us the rest of the way.
Thank you, Sabrina. Next slide, please. So as part of this entire process that Sabrina has just talked about, there have been three main categories of products that PG&E has been able to allocate out. And to begin with is the hydro allocation, which in 2020, MCE opted to accept the hydro portion of the GHG-free allocation, and subsequently plans to accept the 25 through 2027 hydro allocations as well. As we continue through the years, come in 2022, which was the voluntary allocation market offer. This is the process through which renewable resources were also allocated out. And in 2022, MCE opted to accept its short-term allocation of the renewable energy portion for 2023 and 2024. And then subsequently, the rest of what was not allocated out was offered out to the market through the market portion of the VAMO. So it's important to also note here that PG&E will not be offering these volumes or any more volumes moving forward through this voluntary allocation market offer process. And the third product, which is nuclear from Diablo Canyon Power Plant, which will subsequently be referred to as DCPP as we go through the presentation. In 2020, as part of MCE accepting its hydro portion, MCE also chose not to accept its nuclear portion of the GHG-free allocation, which then went back to PG&E. And as of now, MCE has the option to either accept or reject its nuclear allocation for the years 2025 through 2030. Next slide, please. As we dig deeper into this nuclear allocation background, the DCPP itself was licensed by the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission to operate until 2024 for Unit 1 and 2025 for Unit 2. However, the Senate Bill 846 and CPUC together extended the operations for 5 years for Unit 1 and 6 years for Unit 2 through 2029 and 2030, respectively. In part of this too, the CPUC also determined how the costs and benefits of these extended operations should be allocated among eligible load-serving entities or LSCs, and we'll go further into what terms as the eligible LSCs later on the slides. And subsequently, the CPUC directed that PG&E allocate the GHG-free energy attributes to eligible LSCs through this extended period. It's important to note that MCE customers will continue to pay for a portion of the continued operation costs of the DCPP through a non-bypassable cost allocation mechanism, or CAM in this case. Next slide, please. In part of the decision that came out that required the authorization of DCPP, it also required PG&E to allow all CPUC jurisdiction LSCs that are paying for the DCPP's extensions to receive an allocation of these energy attributes. It also required that PG&E creates a process that would allow LSCs to confirm the acceptance of their allocation through a sales agreement with PG&E. However, I would like to note here that this sales agreement is at no additional cost to MCE or otherwise. And then also that LSCs that accept to these allocations must report them on their power content label. Any unclaimed allocation through this entire process would not be reported on any individual's LSC's power content label and would simply disappear from the accounting process. Also, MCE customers cannot bypass the cost of paying for this nuclear allocation, and neither can MCE cause DCPP to run for fewer hours. Any allocation of energy that is received by MCE as a result of this cannot be resold to any other entity and is final. Next slide, please. In the proposal, there are three areas that I would like to highlight here. One being the allocation criteria, the allocation period, and the eligibility to get the allocation. As for the criteria, PG&E has proposed to confer with all eligible LSCs and in addition to the energy division staff to come up with the final allocation criteria and methodology. And the period for which this would be done is for the entirety of the extended operations period, which is through 2025 through 2030. And administratively, this allocation offer will be done on an annual basis to start delivery at every January 1st of every delivery year. All LSCs under CPUC jurisdiction that are currently paying for the DCPP extended operations will be eligible to accept the allocations. Next slide, please. Given that what I've said, I would also like for the board to take some of these considerations as part of the discussions and later decision. And the first is some of the facts about nuclear energy in general is that there are safety concerns of risk and risks of accidents such as the ones that happened in Chernobyl and Fukushima. There is radioactive waste storage issues, large amount of water usage needed for cooling, environmental impacts that may come from mining and potential contamination. And it's also expensive to construct, maintain, and decommission any nuclear power plant. As for DCPP specifically, it is located in an adjacent area next to earthquake faults with a high probability of an earthquake coming in the next 30 years. And given that it's also near a coastal region, there is a risk for tsunami, which can affect a significant population that currently lives within the 30-mile evacuation zone around the DCPP. Next slide, please. It is with these considerations in mind that in May 5th, 2011, the board chose to adopt a resolution which in part read that Marine Energy Authority, then now MCE, has adopted a policy that any unit-specific purchases of nuclear energy will not be allowed for its marine clean energy products, and that it urgently called upon the CPUC and the California legislature to begin a prompt and orderly process of decommissioning the Diablo Canyon and San Onofre nuclear power plants, which at the time and still do pose a significant earthquake risk to life safety and environment in California. Next slide, please. In continuations with some of the considerations, independent of MCE's decision, the DCPP will still run at full capacity regardless of MCE's decision on the allocation offer. Any acceptance or rejections of these allocations will have no impact on the extended operations of the DCPP, which have already been approved. MCE customers will also continue to pay for the operations of the DCPP, regardless of whether MCE elects to take the allocation, and that MCE will also be receiving a renewable adequacy allocation as part of the DCPP operations, reducing its overall obligations of the RA program. Next slide, please. As for MCE specific considerations, nuclear allocations are GHG-free, and they do still align with MCE's mission of reducing emissions and fossil-free energy. MCE has also run numerous solicitations for GHG-free energy, but has not been successful in making progress towards the significant open position that currently is in place. Absent of these allocations, MCE may depend on system power, which currently has very high emissions to fill these open positions. And nuclear energy also still forms part of the system power, which would be dependent upon absent of these allocations. of importance that I would like to really highlight here is that the cost of GHG-free energy has continued and is continuing to rise over the last year, while the supply has been scarce, regardless of whatever price activity has been on the market. Next slide, please. On this slide, I would also like to highlight some of the impacts on MCE's operations that this allocation would be. And so here I'm showing some of the estimated cumulative savings over the next 6 years, should we choose to accept. So the estimated allocation represents about 3,060 gigawatt hours, which translates and represents about 11% of nuclear on the power content label. Monetarily, this also represents about $85 million in savings, which comes to about $145 per customer over this 6-year period. I would like to qualify here that since the time of preparing for this presentation, the price of GHG-free energy has gone up and is now trending towards 100 million for this specific or this same comparison that I'm showing here. The final number of the allocation for the eligible LCs will be determined at a later date, and that we will know the exact numbers after that allocation process has been through. Next slide, please. In this slide, it shows similar numbers to what you've seen on the previous slide, only broken down on a year-by-year basis, so that it can also see what that means for every specific year. Now, if you notice in 2029 and 2030, there's a significant drop, but that's because Unit 1 drops out in 2029, and then Unit 2 drops out in October of 2030. In coming up with these numbers, two things that I would like to point out is that the price is based on the GHG-free forward pricing forecast, and that the allocation criteria that was used to come up with these estimates was the same as the MC's load ratio used in allocating DCPP replacement energy under the MTR, or the midterm reliability obligation order that was decided on by the CPUC a couple years ago. Next slide, please. This slide kind of gives a story of the next steps of the allocation process that will need to take place. And I'll walk myself back from January 1st, 2025, where this is the first day of the expected annual delivery. And this is also when the non-bypassable charges through CAM begin for DCPP. Now, for that to happen, sales agreements need to be in place by December 31st of 2024. And to allow for ample time for those executed sales agreements to take place, CalCC and other stakeholders have requested that LSCs receive their anticipated allocations by November 2024. To receive that, stakeholders together with PG&E need to work to finalize the allocation methodology sometime in August. And the asterisks on 2024 and 2025 mean that that process will be annual, and that every December 31st of every subsequent year would be the deadline for the sales agreement for the following year, so that the deliveries for that subsequent year can happen on January 1st. Next slide, please. As for next steps, one will be to solicit feedback from the board, and subsequently from that, head to Community Power Coalition, or COMPOW, in July 24th, Technical Committee on August 2nd, and the Executive Committee on August 7th. MCE staff will then review feedback and request board direction at a future board meeting. It is at this point that I would also like to reiterate that we are facing an extremely harsh market condition that's characterized by skyrocketing prices, scarce supply of renewable and GHG-free energy, higher demands for the same supply due to increasing state and self-imposed goals on emissions and clean energy. And with that, I would like to take it back for the board for question. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Are there any questions or comments from directors in Concord?
I just heard Concord. I didn't hear my name.
Yes, Director Brown.
Yeah. So I'm trying to maintain my hatred of nuclear power. And so if the direction is that it goes back to the policy, I want the history, because it was my understanding that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission was not even going to be able to look at this power plant until like 28, 29. And based on the data that you have here, it looks like that this is all still working. And I'm very upset that something bad is going to happen and the goodwill of MCE is going to be put underneath. In other words, it's going to be negative, because when I think of MCE, I think of clean, and I don't care what anybody says, nuclear power is not, in my mind, clean. Well, it's amazing to me I'm not glowing in the dark, because I used to swim in the ocean by San Onofre before we knew better. So, I'm angry over this, and my understanding is the only reason that wasn't shut down is because Gavin Newsom indicated, and Bill Dodd carried the legislation, he's my senator for another 4 months or something, is that because they know that the power grid with PG&E and MCE is not enough for everything that they want to do. So all I ask is that we don't make a decision today, that we get the history behind why this is continuing. Because I didn't read the PowerPoint like I should have, but it scares the hell out of me. The earthquake, something bad is going to happen. In fact, there was an earthquake in my feed today, 3.4. That was in this area, I think, if I remember reading it. So, I know it's going to cost more, but I can't vote on something that I don't have any kind of belief in terms of safety. I just don't.
Thank you, Director Brown. Do we have any additional comments from Concord?
Yeah, this is Dave Fong. Just a couple of questions. One, and I totally respect what you said regarding some of whether it's called consumer perception or it's reality. But I guess I'm looking at trying to be objective and ask, as we take a look at over the next 10 years, with what's been going on in the cost of energy, especially renewable energy, should we step back and rethink our current position on nuclear? Given one, financial implications, and two, are there regulatory headwinds that we're going to be faced with where we're expected to comply and we can't because we're not able to meet our renewable energy benchmarks? And so I would like to have a thorough discussion on this subject. But I really want to understand both the pros and cons, and more importantly, what the implications on not just MCE, but the public will be over the next 5 to 10 years.
Through the chair, I just want to respond in one thing. It's my understanding this was supposed to all be done by 2030. So the thought that it's going to continue on is scary to me. So I just needed to make that comment. That was my understanding. It's supposed to be shut down in 2025. So it bothers me that we now have the thought in this PowerPoint that the Nuclear Regulatory Agency has looked at this power plant, and based on everything I've been reading, that has not happened and probably won't. So I think we need to be very, very, very careful, and I want a lot of data. I don't think we have to be in a rush to make it even in the timeline that's stated in here. So, but I hear what you're saying, but you know, Yeah, I was around when wasn't it Chernobyl, the one in Ukraine? Yeah. And then we have somebody who wants to bomb that one. So I do worry with stuff that's happening around the world too, about what would happen if somebody decided to take out that nuclear.
Mhm. Thank you for sharing those concerns, Director Brown. Do we have any question, Director Paulson?
Yeah, and thanks for the presentation. Just a couple clarifications. One is I'm trying to understand MCE's options. You know, the way this was presented, it sounds like we're going to be forced to pay for this whether we use the energy or not. And you know, I just want to understand any leverage we have, or you know, we play chicken or hardball, doesn't matter. And as a side note to that, I don't know about the costs. You know, if I saw the number correctly, 145 over 6 years is $20 a year to a customer. It's more the availability. I think the arbitrage and the availability of the power may be the bigger issue. And then the second clarification, I think, to Director Fong's point is there's Diablo Valley Canyon and there's nuclear energy. And that's a particular reactor, a particular technology on a fault line. And there's a new generation with new waste disposal. And I think that would be a topic I'm new to the board, but I'd be interested in exploring. But I think what's on the table tonight is really about that specific, very politically charged location.
Okay, Director Perry.
Yeah, three questions, maybe for Don. First is on regionalization. I'm curious how regionalization, any decision on this is affected by regionalization. Just thinking about if other states in the Western region pursue nuclear power over the coming years, if we're signaling that we're open to that through this. And then the second question is on Diablo Canyon specifically. I saw it goes through 2030, but the hydro unallocated goes through 2027. So just wondering why those are kind of on the different timeframes. And then lastly, in terms of kind of whether we pay for it or we don't pay for it, curious on why it's accounted as zero. And whether we've thought about a legislative solution to that. So it just seems strange to not, that whether or not it's counted is determined by whether we pay for it. Yeah, it's a little odd to follow that. So just curious if we've thought about a legislative solution to that and pursued bill authors in the legislature.
Yeah, I can speak to those three things pretty quickly. First, on the regionalization issue, that is progressing, but it's going to take quite a bit of time for us to get to sort of the next step, the phase 2 of regionalization. I think that any acceptance or rejection of nuclear allocations by load serving entities in California is not likely to have any impact on the market as far as new nuclear. Just as for folks that may not be aware, there's currently a moratorium on any new nuclear being built in California until there is a solution for the waste. And currently there isn't a solution for the waste. Potentially new nuclear could pop up in other states. But again, I don't think that the acceptance of this allocation would have any bearing on that. And I just want to reiterate what makes this decision so odd, for lack of a better word, is that it is really what we would be accepting is really just for a compliance obligation that we have at the CPUC. It would not have any direct impact on anything that happens at Diablo Canyon. It's going to run based on what the governor has allowed it to run for, and what we heard earlier in the presentation. There are certain parameters that it has to follow, but it has nothing to do with whether these allocations are taken or not. What makes it also even more puzzling is that the allocation itself, if we don't take it, we still have to pay for it, and the nuclear plant is not going to run any less. And that allocation doesn't even go back to PG&E. It just disappears. So it's a very odd decision being put forward to the board here. Because it would be a lot easier if we could say, we either want to promote having more nuclear run or not. Really, this decision doesn't have any bearing on that. It just will either cause us to have to go out and buy more greenhouse gas free energy to replace what we would accept, or we would simply accept it and not have to go out and buy that energy. Beyond that, I don't get the sense that any other developers or anyone out there is paying any attention to what we do. I think that the folks that might be paying attention and might ask questions about it are folks that look at our power content label, because it would show up on our power content label. To get to your next question about why is the hydro ending in 2027 and this is going through 2023, really these allocations are a result of what PG&E has in its portfolio and isn't going to sell, isn't going to use. And different products have different timelines under their contractual terms. So the hydro allocations are ending. Also, the CPUC has determined that they're ending some of the allocation process. And I won't belabor this because I know it's late, but we could get into why VAMO is ending now. It probably shouldn't be, but that's a disagreement that we have with the CPUC. And with your last question, why is this GHG free energy, why has it been valued at 0 by the CPUC? Clearly, it's not 0, as Johnny just told you, and it's climbing by the day. This is another disagreement that we've had with the CPUC. We certainly advocated for it to have value. At the time that we were arguing this point, we did contemplate legislation, and we worked with other CCAs, and we floated legislation with a couple of legislators. And there was a pretty strong lack of interest in legislating around the PCIA because it's so in the weeds. It's the power charge and difference adjustment. Folks tend to be pretty deferential to the CPUC on determining those what the value should be of the PCIA. And I think we made a very good case for why there should be a value of GHG free energy in the market. But unfortunately, the CPUC did not agree with our recommendation.
And then just one last question, Don. My understanding, right, is this just would affect the light green option, not deep green, correct? In terms of the content label.
That is correct. It would be applied to the default product.
So then it'd be the 11, basically 11% or maybe a little bit more, because the deep green wouldn't be affected, would be on that. How would that affect because my understanding is, I think it's 60 something percent that's renewable, but we say it's 95% GHG free or fossil free. But I think MCE's board at some point took a position that said nuclear energy wasn't GHG free, or was, how would that change that 95%, or would it? Okay.
Don, your microphone is not on.
So
Thank
sorry
you.
about that. Yeah, I was just saying that our board did not take a position on whether nuclear is GHG free or not. So therefore, it would be considered GHG free. It would not have a bearing on our, it would add to the GHG free content of our power supply. Certainly, as compared to system power, if we had to replace it with system power, it would be a better option from a GHG free standpoint. But I will speak to the policy that our board approved back in May of 2011. It was through our contract with our sole supplier at that time was Shell Energy North America, except we did have a few side power purchase agreements with others. But in our power supply agreement with Shell Energy North America, we said you cannot include any unit specific purchases of coal or nuclear. And that has been our approach since that time, to not make any unit specific purchases of coal or nuclear. There have been times when we have purchased greenhouse gas free products particularly from out of state, that are a bundle of resources. And sometimes there has been a bit of nuclear that shows up in that. And our board has weighed in on that and said it's okay if there's a little bit showing up in the mix, especially when we're having trouble finding products out there in the market. This also would not be a unit specific purchase of nuclear energy, so it wouldn't violate any existing policy. But some might argue that it is in opposition to maybe the spirit of the thinking at that time of our board.
Sabrina?
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to jump in real quick and clarify on the difference in time length between the hydro allocation and the Diablo allocation. And the market price benchmark or the GHG free being valued at 0. So yeah, as Don mentioned, we have been fighting with the CPUC that there should be a GHG free value attributed to the PCIA to ensure that customers who are paying for those resources are getting the full benefit of those resources via a lowering of the PCIA if we did include a GHG free value. Recently, the commission actually did adopt kind of a choice framework for the IOUs where for hydro, they could either allocate the hydro on 3-year compliance periods, in this case from 2025 to 2027, or they could retain the GHG-free attributes and apply a market price benchmark. So the commission has since come around to adopting a GHG-free market price benchmark if the IOU were to retain those attributes. But PG&E made the determination for the 2025 to 2027 period to actually go ahead and allocate. So we still will get those attributes for free. And then after in 2027, PG&E will elect again whether or not it wants to allocate out for the next compliance period. So the hydro allocations will now be done in 3-year increments, while Diablo will be done in 1-year increments. And alternatively, the commission declined to adopt they still felt recently, as of last year, that they couldn't assign a GHG-free premium to the nuclear attributes. So that's why there isn't a value there. With that, I just wanted to make that point in case it's helpful.
Thank you, Sabrina. Director Zorn?
Thank you. I didn't know you could see me all the way from over there. I just wanted to voice my support for this. I wanted to read the one bullet that you read earlier. Nuclear allocations are GHG free when aligned with MCE's mission to reduce emissions with fossil-free energy. It's considered a clean energy, and I would be supportive of listening to additional data presented about why this would be a good thing for us to do. That said, to play kind of the devil's advocate and sort of to acknowledge the concerns that you were having, the concern with nuclear energy is not when things are running smoothly. The concern with nuclear energy when things are not running smoothly. So PG&E will continue to own the facility. So if we accept nuclear allocations and there is a major earthquake and a major nuclear disaster, is there environmental liability for MCE for having accepted nuclear allocations?
No, there would not be any legal liability.
But would there be public perception liability? I mean, that's.
Well, I mean,
that,
yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think that's up to all of us to determine.
To decide, right?
Possible.
Yeah. I'm supportive. Before this conversation started and people started having providing comments, I'm supportive of rethinking the policy that we put in place in 2011, and I think that I recognize the perceived or the perception from the public, but everyone else is getting PG&E energy, which means everyone else who doesn't have MCE is also getting this power. So I'm not completely convinced that that perception is necessarily a reason for us to say no.
Thank you, Director Zorn. Director Hills?
Yeah, thank you. Just to staff, the question here is not whether or not Diablo Canyon remains open, correct? So so an earthquake can happen But the decision on whether or not Diablo Canyon remains in operation has already been made and is not being made by this board. So I do think it's a valid point, but it's one I think more appropriately placed potentially with the regulators. The decision, it sounds to me, is whether or not we want to elect to allow our ratepayers a significant cost savings. And these are ratepayers who are already paying for enormous loans to keep Diablo Canyon open. I believe as a board, we have a fiduciary responsibility to our ratepayers, given the fact that we have no control over whether or not Diablo Canyon is open. And as I've said at one of our previous workshops, I think we should have a broader discussion over nuclear. Is it the ideal option? Absolutely not. Is natural gas the ideal option? Absolutely not. Would having a significant amount more of solar and wind be fantastic? Yes. Those options aren't before us right now. The options before us right now are whether or not we are going to fulfill our fiduciary responsibility to our ratepayers. So from my perspective, it would be irresponsible to not accept. And also, I do believe if you are in the middle of an emergency, you need to act like you are in the middle of an emergency. I go back and remind you all of what our skies look like in 2020 when they were orange. My children could not go outside. We were all wearing masks, and this was not because of COVID. This was because of the smoke in the air. There are bad decisions either way. And I do believe that if we are in an area where we are not able to produce sufficient clean energy in time to actually help to make bend the curve on this global crisis, we need to be able to be open to considering all options. And at this point, Diablo Canyon produces 10% of the electricity for the state of California with no clear replacement from another source. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Hills. Director Beckman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The way I see it, there are really only two conceivable reasons why a board member might not support this allocation. One is that board members' own concerns about nuclear energy, which I think is a valid topic for discussion. The other is concerns about public perception. So the first thing I wanted to ask staff was, do we have any reason to believe that we might lose current or prospective customers if we are showing nuclear content on our content label?
We can collect more information on that over the course of the next few meetings. But Jamie, do you want to comment further?
Sure. Yeah, we are going to be hosting our Community Power Coalition meeting at the end of this month. And I think just like what we're seeing in this board, there are differing opinions. And there are some folks who will feel strongly about nuclear. But I believe Director Zorn also pointed out that if you're not with MCE, then you're with PG&E and you're going to get nuclear. If your board does decide to accept this nuclear, then you'll either be with MCE or PG&E, and in which case there would be nuclear either option. So I think even if MCE does accept the nuclear, MCE will continue to be cleaner, have more greenhouse gas free content, and provide all the local benefits. So I don't imagine folks would opt out for making that decision, but I think we'll hear more from folks at our upcoming community meetings. And now that we've initiated these conversations at public meetings, we also have Jenna, who was presenting earlier, who her team leads those conversations, as well as Zay Perrin, who is our VP of Customer Operations, and they take all of our phone calls. And I would just reiterate, unless they wanted to add anything, that I think there are varying degrees of opinions and levels of passion about being pro or anti-nuclear.
Thank you, Jamie. That's helpful. And there's one other thing that I'll add. It was mentioned in the presentation that water use for cooling was a concern around nuclear power. I have toured the Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant. It's cooled by seawater. So I think, while that is maybe a concern about nuclear generally, I think in this case it does not apply. But regardless, my opinion is that I do not see how we could not accept this allocation. I think Carrie said it, Director Hill has said it very well. The climate crisis is a crisis, and in a crisis, you have to triage. That means choosing between options that are bad or worse. And in this case, it's clear to me that climate change is the worst option. I think rejecting this allocation would do nothing to curtail the nuclear industry or any risks that are associated with producing nuclear power, if that is a concern behind a potential vote to reject. What we're looking at, what's on the table, is a substantial amount of greenhouse gas-free energy at a time when that is exactly what we need, and we are already paying for that energy. So to say no to this on principle, I think harms our agency, it harms our ratepayers, and since it would leave us more dependent on system energy, I think it probably harms the planet. It does nothing to advance our principles if our principles are no to nuclear. So I am in full support of moving forward with this allocation. I realize that this is just a discussion tonight, and I look forward to supporting the continuation of this discussion. And I would also support us revisiting our policy around nuclear. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Beckman. Director Martinez?
Yeah, I know why we have greenhouse gas-free products, but I don't think I think we have to quantify that. And nuclear energy is a major issue. It's like choosing between strychnine or arsenic. You know, which poison do you want? You know, and to say that and to call nuclear energy as clean energy, I think is misleading. And I think if we take a stance that says it's clean energy, we are misleading our customers. We're making our customers believe that it's okay by accepting it. And I think it's a disservice to our customers to do that. And we should actually have another category that we should not accept. And we've done that in the past by rejecting nuclear energy. This brings to mind when I was in New York, I was walking down the street, there was a street fight, and all this money was falling out of the fighters' pockets. And my instinct was to sit, grab some of that money that was, that was falling out of the pockets. And my partner said, "Are you crazy? That's blood money." And I think that nuclear energy, by accepting this energy that we're forced to pay, is endorsing the energy which we should be rejecting. So on those principles, I would have to say that this is not something we should do.
I believe we have directors from Napa that would like to speak.
Yes, thank you. This is Director Painter, City of Napa. And many of the comments have already been made. I just want to say I very much am in agreement with what Director Hillis said in terms of our obligation to our ratepayers. And Director Beckman also sort of reiterated those points. My understanding is that this item is also going to go back to the executive and technical committees. So I would just ask that as you meet and we talk about this further, that we really consider a way to explain this to our ratepayers in a way that is understandable. We all heard it tonight in a way that, at least for me, I'll speak for myself, I didn't understand that allotment process as clearly as what I learned through the presentation. So our ratepayers are going to pay for this energy regardless of whether we accept it or don't accept it. And I think that's an issue in terms of where we are with purchasing energy. So if we move forward with this, and I would be in favor of moving forward with accepting the allocation, I think we should consider a way to very clearly be able to explain this to our ratepayers in a very understandable way. Not for tonight to figure all that out, but I would hope that that conversation can be continued both in the executive and technical committee meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any additional questions or comments? Director Ackerman?
This is a fascinating discussion, and I guess it's going to go to the technical committee. So I will be reviewing tonight's video and trying to get this down better in my head. When I try to think about things like this, I usually find it grounding to think about what's actually physically happening. And what's actually physically happening here is there's no difference. This reactor will continue to run until 2029 and 2030, and it'll be shut down unless the governor makes another change, but we think it will. Nothing we do changes that. So that, I think, is just a way to ground ourselves in it. I just have one question. I won't take time with trying to sort out all the stuff that I'm still trying to figure out in my head here. But how does resource adequacy fit in with this? Do we get, so it sounds like the GHG attributes are kind of like our old friends, the RECs. They're an attribute of the energy that is sort of a beneficial attribute, and we're being offered to get them, but it doesn't have anything to do with the actual energy. We're paying for the energy, and the energy is part of the mix already. And then we're just being offered those attributes, which we can stick on our power content label, which is nice. I don't have any objection to that. I'm not quite clear on where resource adequacy fits in with it. Thank you.
Johnny or Sabrina, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, thank you. To answer your question, so as part of the decision to extend the operations, which in part of that was reliability, what happened is that given that the eligible LECs were also required to make the fair share of the payments, as part of that benefit is that the RA requirements that each LSC, and moving forward here, I'll speak about MCE specifically, is that our own requirements are going to be reduced by our allocated amounts. So say, and this is not the exact numbers, we had 1,200 and our allocation is 100. Now our obligation moving forward will be 1,100 and not 1,200.
So in consideration of the fact that we are required, we have no choice in paying for part of the operation of the plant until it's decommissioned, we're getting part of the RA from it. So, okay, I think that's clear. And that may help as we all think about whether to accept the energy, that we're sort of all the major parts of it, the blood money, as you say, the major parts of we're buying this energy, we're getting the RA for it. That's all fixed and we can't even change it. The only thing we're thinking about is, do we get the free GHG attributes in addition? Is that reasonably approximately clear? Okay, all right, thanks. And I occupied a nuclear power plant for about a week when I was in my 20s, and I've significantly rethought nuclear over and over again, and finally just decided there's no use thinking about it anymore because there's no more being built.
Well,
So.
I would like to argue that by accepting it, we're agreeing that it's okay. And if we don't accept it, then we have the ability to organize our constituents to go against it. I was part of March for Education. We formed an organization and marched from my school down elementary to Sacramento to get our school debt forgiven. We ended up with getting a refinance, which saved us millions of dollars, but that never would have happened if we hadn't made an effort to make that change. So by sitting here and saying that our hands are tied, we'll just have to go along with it, I think is wrong. And it does not represent our constituents who want clean energy. They don't just want greenhouse free energy, they want green energy. And nuclear power is not green. We found parts of Fukushima on our shores in Oregon. So what's happened between Japan and here? We don't know, but something happened, and our world is not any cleaner because of it. And I think we need to make a stand and say that we want a clean Earth.
This is Vic, and I just, really appreciate the discussions. So, we have our vision and mission that we are driving to. We have our fiduciary responsibility to our customers. In this case, our customers are paying for Diablo to run, including for its decommissioning, if and when it closes. Operationally, I don't see that happening in California for now, but it may. So I just, Johnny shared with you, but just recently, the much higher rates that we are getting exposed to buy GHG free. And for our financial independence, this is a rate increase consideration coming to us. The staff and MCE is not saying what to do. This is completely the board's decision. So it's a really interesting dilemma where our customers are already paying for it. That's why they can get it for free, because it's not free, actually. They pay for it. And they're going to pay for the decommissioning. In the same time, like Don and Sabrina maybe explained it, is that if we don't take it, it would just disappear into thin air per the PUC discussion while the plant is still running. But that's $120 million impact to us. And in a market that Vidi and Johnny are, almost every day I hear from them that they are having really serious difficulty to fill that very large hole we have to meet the board's and our vision and mission. So I'm just giving you both sides of the coin about what it is that we are facing. But one thing I just want to acknowledge is that seems like the board is open for discussion from both sides of the coin. And I think that would be very healthy. But the need is like knocking on our door in a couple of months max. Just for additional color to what we discussed. Thank you.
I may, Madam Chair.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so thank you, everybody. Obviously, this is a really important topic for us to figure out. I'd like to offer, after having the benefit of everybody's insight, that we sort of separate the compliance requirements from the overall direction of this board as to nuclear. I think it really deserves a much longer conversation as we look forward and figure out, how do we meet our mandate? I also think the compliance piece of this enables us to deliver on our mission at a cost that is reasonable to our customers. PG&E delivers about 53% of its energy to customers coming from Diablo Canyon, right? Carrie said Director Hillis said it's 10% of the overall in California. We're not doing that. That's not what we're doing. And so the marketing team, hopefully next time we have this discussion, can maybe help us with some language and some communication. But I would like to just suggest that as we move forward, we understand the compliance piece as a separate issue from how this board feels about nuclear. And if this enables us to deliver on our mission at this time, then I can support that. And I agree also with Director Hillis and Director Beckman that it's all hands on deck right now. We can't wait. Climate crisis is real. It is a huge problem. This is an opportunity for us to continue delivering the level of service that we know that we need to do. And I'm going to move forward with it and support it.
So our board members that are not on the technical committee, can they attend if they want to dive into this discussion a little more?
Yes, all board members are welcome to any committee meetings. We have a provision called Committee of the Whole that was set up from the beginning to ensure that could happen.
Thank you.
And Don, just to check in, it looked like it was going to both technical and executive. Is there some sort of reason why we wouldn't try to combine those discussions into one meeting? Or
Great question. Yeah. And another question is, why are we not just making it an action item tonight? The reason why is that we know that this is an issue that has a lot of heartfelt critics, supporters and critics in our community, and we wanted to make sure that there would be time for public input. I was actually expecting us to see more public input tonight. We are intentionally bringing this to the Community Power Coalition to allow for community input. This is a tough policy decision, probably one of the toughest that we've faced in a very long time. And I want to make sure that our community feels like they are being heard before the decision is made one way or the other. And that is why we have it teed up for a couple of meetings. If the board wanted to consolidate and just have this heard in one committee, that would be fine. We were imagining that it might then come back to the board at the next board meeting for action. But the board could also say, we think this is this is an issue that could just be determined at the executive committee or the technical committee, because really it's an administrative allocation. It's not something that requires the board to take action. But we just set it up with an abundance of opportunity for community input because of the type of issue that it is.
I really appreciate that. I definitely think it should be a full board decision. I would just say that in terms of how it's presented, maybe on the amount of money, it'd be helpful to see it per year, because 145 seems like a really big number. But then I did the math, and I think it was Director Paulson said, right, it's about $24 a year. It's about 7 cents per day per customer. It's actually not very big, right? So just thinking about, right, we get into these things of like, oh, is this a significant piece of the budget, right? And then on the flip side, right, that kind of leads us in a discussion of, oh, maybe it doesn't matter. But on the flip side, what could we do with 145 million over 6 years, right? Is there programs that are roughly that cost, right? Are there other things we do, right? We just had a long discussion about $5.4 million item, right? So, it's both insignificant and also significant depending on what we're comparing it to. So that might be helpful to include.
Thank you, Director Perry. And I just want to thank staff for bringing it forth. I think it's important to make sure our directors feel heard as well, and taking it to all of the committees or the technical and executive committee. You have a smaller group, so you get a chance to get different types of questions out, but it's good to know that any director can attend either or meeting if they choose to. And then once it's brought back, as Director Perry shared, like some of the things that maybe staff can present to break it down, and just a little different messaging on how we communicate this information as well. Because it is a tough decision, and it's been a great conversation. I just want to check in with the clerk to see if we happen to have any public comment on this item.
I see no raised hands, Chair.
Okay. All right, bringing it back to the directors. Director Martinez.
Each of us have an equal vote, but we represent different amounts of constituents. So in a sense, that's unequal in terms of our customers' voice. And because of that, I think it's important that decisions as controversial as this not be administrative decisions, as you've so denoted. And I believe that we need to make a greater effort at having town halls over this, so that we as board members, can get a sense of what our constituents think and feel about this issue. And knowing that, we should vote accordingly.
Can I ask a really quick
Oh, I'm so
Mhm.
sorry, Chair. Really quickly, I would really appreciate, and maybe this is a Jenna question, since you're with communications, but if MCE staff could provide the directors a social media post or something with the correct type of verbiage, I find people are very willing to give their opinions on social media. And if we feel like this is the right time to do that, I would be more than willing to ask my community how they feel and, see if we get an influx of positive or negative responses. I would, of course, be willing to wait until we feel comfortable making a particular splash like that. But yeah, if when we're ready to survey our communities, I would really appreciate something along those lines.
Thank you. JB Ackman, Vice President, Public Affairs. We certainly would have a robust messaging campaign at any point that we were going to go out to the public for comment. I think, we have been working with Compow and communicating to them what the content of next week's upcoming session will be. And we'll continue to use sort of the feedback that we get there to understand how best to continue to amplify the message. That will be a follow-on phase once we sort of have a better sense of direction following Compound. But I appreciate that, and we certainly will give you resources to reach out to your communities when we arrive at that phase.
Can I also add just one more request that the compliance piece of this be really fully articulated at the subcommittee level, because that's the lens through which I am seeing this. If there's other ways to achieve compliance and other ways to achieve compliance that don't impact our rates, I'd like to understand that as well. So if that could be included in further conversation.
Absolutely. And I think that the committee discussions will have a very similar presentation, but we'll be soliciting input. The input tonight has been really helpful so that we can really tailor and hone in on certain things. I also want to point out that we have Zay Paran, our Director of Customer Operations, on. And I just wanted to see, Zay, if you wanted to add anything to the questions that came up on that topic.
Thank you, Dawn. Hi, everyone. Zay Perrin, Vice President of Customer Operations. And, the one thing that I will note is that we've been running our in-house call center for over 18 months now, and 45% of all calls that we receive are about cost. So when we're talking to customers about what they can do as far as the energy in their home and what we can do to help support them, we talk about their rates, their usage, and that cost. And it's really while we have those conversations that we get to talk to them about the value of MCE and what we're doing in response with clean energy. But the reason for the call is primarily the cost. And $145 is not a lot over 6 years, but that is still $2 a month per customer. And we have customers that consider leaving us when it's less than $2 per month in comparison. So I just want to make that note that cost is what we see as the first level of concern for customers, especially right now with the heat wave. I personally, as the vice president, have made 16 calls to customers who are concerned about their costs and concerned about being able to stay in the payment programs that they're in right now because they can't pay their bills. So that's my first concern. And in helping those customers find ways through the environment that we're in right now. So that's what I would note on that.
Yes.
I just wanted to add one observation. Thank you for that insight. I just wanted to add one thing in addition to that. Every customer that we lose due to cost is a customer that goes back to PG&E, and that sets us back one small step in our drive to meet our climate goals. So I think when we talk about cost, it's easy to think, are we prioritizing money over, the greater good? But they're actually closely related. And so I just wanted to make sure that we're cognizant of that.
Do we have any additional questions or comments? All right, seeing none or hearing none. So this item will move to the technical committee. All right, so we are moving on to our last agenda item, board and staff matters. Are there any board or staff matters? Hearing none, seeing none. All right, I will adjourn the meeting at 9:53 p.m. I want to thank everyone and have a great evening.